In January 1991, 8 of the most highly trained soldiers in the world were dropped into Iraq. Only one came out. This is how. The man on the floor of the Syrian border post is a staff sergeant in the Special Air Service Regiment. He holds the military medal. He has passed the hardest selection process in the British Army. He has completed operations on multiple continents. The Syrian border guards think he might be a vagrant. The average person loses 1 pound per week on a strict diet. Chris Ryan lost 36 pounds in 8 days. Not from dieting, from his own body eating itself alive. He has no radio. He has no GPS. He has consumed approximately 200 calories across the entire period, the equivalent of a small handful of nuts. He has been bleeding internally for 36 hours from water he drank from a contaminated stream, because the alternative was dying of thirst before he reached this border. 3 of his 7 teammates are already dead. 4 more are in a cell in Baghdad. He is the only one who made it out. And to understand how a special forces operation collapsed this completely, and how one man walked out of it anyway, we need to go back to the night it all started. The Gulf War in January 1991 has a problem that nobody wants to talk about in front of the cameras. Saddam Hussein has mobile Scud missile launchers, Soviet-designed truck-mounted ballistic missiles capable of carrying conventional or chemical warheads, and they are moving every night across the flat desert of western Iraq. These convoys reposition, launch, and vanish again before coalition air power can locate them. They are hitting Israel. They are hitting Saudi Arabia. And if Israel retaliates, the Arab coalition holding this alliance together fractures overnight. Coalition air forces have been trying to suppress the Western Scud corridor for weeks. They have achieved, by the most generous estimates, almost nothing. The solution, as it so often is when air power runs out of ideas, is to put men on the ground. 8 men. Call sign Bravo. 20. Their task: insert 300 kilometers behind enemy lines, establish a covert lying-up position, locate Scud convoys using visual observation, call in airstrikes, and, if possible, destroy communications infrastructure along the main supply route. It is exactly the kind of mission the SAS was created for. The patrol commander is Sergeant Andy McNabb, an experienced operator with Northern Ireland and other classified deployments to his credit. His lead scout and navigation specialist is Staff Sergeant Chris Ryan. Ryan was 30 years old. He had a wife and a young daughter at home in the United Kingdom. He had told neither of them exactly where he was going. That was standard. That was the job. He picked up his Bergen, climbed aboard the Chinook, and did not look back. The other 6 men, Vince Phillips, Bob Concilio, Mark Coburn, Mike Coburn, Ian Pring, and Stephen Lane, were similarly equipped, similarly trained, and similarly uncommunicative about their destination. They were inserted by Chinook on the night of the 22nd of January 1991. Approximately 300 kilometers behind Iraqi lines in the Wadi Tubal region, west of the town of Al-Qaim. Their Bergen rucksacks weighed, accounts vary, between 95 and 210 pounds each. Every account agrees these were brutal loads for men expected to move fast and fight light if compromised. The plan was textbook. Find a line-up position, observe, report, survive. The plan lasted approximately 12 hours. Within hours of insertion, the patrol was spotted by a local civilian. By whom exactly? is one of the enduring disputes of this story. Andy McNabb's account identifies a young goat herder. Michael Asher's ground investigation, conducted years later with Iraqi witnesses, suggests the compromise may have involved a bulldozer operator working on a nearby oil pipeline. The accounts do not agree. What is not disputed is what happened within 3 hours. Iraqi armored vehicles and dismounted infantry were converging on the patrol's position. They ran. What followed was a fighting withdrawal in rapidly deteriorating weather. Because here is the first thing this story gets wrong in the popular imagination. Western Iraq, in January 1991, was experiencing its coldest winter in 30 years. Sub-zero temperatures, sleet, ice, heavy snowfall. These men were dressed for a desert environment. They were not dressed for this. That contrast between expectation and reality is the first thing that will kill members of this patrol. It will not be the last. By nightfall, on January 23rd, moving north in a blizzard, the patrol made contact with Iraqi forces near the main supply route, and the wind that night was loud enough to swallow a shouted order at 10 meters. In the dark, in a blizzard, under fire, the patrol lost each other the way you lose someone in a crowd. One moment there, the next simply gone. Chris Ryan was alone. He had his compass. He had his silk map. He had the clothes on his back. And somewhere to the northwest, there was a border. He started walking. On the second night alone, Ryan stopped moving and looked up. No helicopter was coming. He had no working radio. The patrol's PRC-319 communications equipment had been lost or rendered inoperable during the contact. No signal would reach a friendly frequency. No extraction was inbound. The only navigation system available to him was 4 billion years old. A star sitting almost perfectly above the North Pole, burning cold and steady in the Iraqi winter sky. He found Polaris. He set his bearing northwest. He started walking. No GPS, commercial GPS, was not available to ground forces in this configuration in 1991. Ryan was navigating by prismatic compass and a silk escape map, a small-scale printed cloth document designed for exactly this contingency, but offering minimal terrain detail. No way to call for help. No way to confirm his position to any friendly force. No way to know whether anyone was even looking for him. No food. His rations had been exhausted or discarded during the fighting withdrawal. He would consume, across 8 days of movement, approximately 200 calories from fieldcraft, insects, raw vegetation, and 1 head of raw broccoli, taken from an Iraqi farmhouse in a moment that would have been almost comical under any other circumstances. The distance from his last confirmed position to the Syrian border was approximately 180 to 200 kilometers in a straight line. Ryan's actual ground covered, accounting for detours, navigation corrections, and route deviations to avoid Iraqi activity, was estimated by Michael Asher's ground survey at over 200 kilometers, though Ryan's own account records figures closer to 300 kilometers. A malnourished, partially poisoned, sleep-deprived man walked this distance in just under 8 days. His patrol mates had attempted to move south, toward Saudi Arabia, toward friendly lines, toward what seemed logical on a map. That route crossed denser Iraqi military infrastructure, through the main supply corridors of an army at war. Ryan chose northwest, toward Syria, the harder route geographically, the more uncertain destination diplomatically, the only direction that worked. Of the other 7 men who had climbed aboard that Chinook, Sergeant Vince Phillips was dead of hypothermia. Stephen Lane was dead. Bob Consiglio was dead, killed in a firefight near the border. 4 men were in an Iraqi interrogation cell in Baghdad. 7 men. 6 outcomes, none of them good. Let's break down what the 8th man actually did. The first layer of Ryan's survival is the most fundamental and the most underappreciated. He knew exactly where he was going. Without GPS, without reliable landmarks across flat desert, Ryan navigated by stellar observation, using Polaris as his primary bearing reference, combined with his prismatic compass to maintain a consistent northwest heading every single night. This is pre-technological navigation at its purest, and it is harder than it sounds when you are moving in total darkness, half delirious from dehydration, while simultaneously listening for vehicle sounds and human activity. He also made a decision, one that seems obvious in hindsight, but was psychologically non-trivial under these conditions: to commit to the route and not second-guess it. Survival psychology literature is consistent on this point. One of the most common fatal errors in escape situations is route indecision. A survivor repeatedly changes direction in response to perceived threats, covering enormous extra distance while expending irreplaceable energy. Ryan moved northwest every night, regardless of what he saw or heard during the day's hiding. The discipline of the route is itself a survival tool. Ryan moved exclusively at night and spent his days in scrapes, shallow, body-length depressions dug or found in the terrain, covered with dried vegetation, mud, and rock. A lone figure on flat desert terrain is visible to vehicle-mounted observation at several kilometers. Movement consumes calories Ryan did not have. By lying motionless for 12 to 14 hours per day, Ryan was conserving energy at the most basic physiological level. Every meter not walked during daylight was muscle protein not yet consumed. Every hour of motionless rest was a marginal recovery for a cardiovascular system running on empty. Some of the cold that was killing his teammates was, paradoxically, reducing his metabolic rate during the hide phases and extending his survival window by small but non-trivial margins. He was hibernating by day and hunting by night. Iraqi search parties found his tracks on at least 2 occasions, according to witness accounts gathered by Michael Asher during his ground investigation years later. They found the tracks. They never found the man. Not once. Not in 7 nights. But that was only the first layer. By approximately day 4 to 5, Ryan's body had exhausted every available fat store and was running primarily on gluconeogenesis, the conversion of skeletal muscle protein into glucose for brain and organ function. This is the mechanism behind the 36-pound weight loss. He did not lose 36 pounds of fat. He lost organ-supporting muscle mass, metabolized for energy. It is a state that, if prolonged much beyond 8 to 10 days without caloric input, becomes irreversible. The body begins consuming cardiac muscle, and the heart fails. Ryan was, by the time he crossed the Syrian border, measurably days from that threshold. What kept him functional, barely functional, was the base physical conditioning of a special air service trained soldier, combined with one specific psychological technique documented across multiple extreme survival accounts: goal segmentation. Not I must reach Syria. Not I have 150 kilometers to go. Simply, reach that ridgeline, reach that culvert, reach that pile of rocks. Each micro-objective achievable within the hour. Each completion a signal telling the survival brain, you are moving forward. Continue. He did not allow himself to think about the full distance, ever. Then his mind started lying to him. By day 5, Ryan was experiencing auditory and visual hallucinations. This is physiologically predictable. The human brain, deprived of REM sleep for more than 72 hours and operating under severe caloric deficit, begins generating intrinsic sensory experiences indistinguishable from external stimuli. What Ryan experienced were predominantly presence hallucinations. The neurological sense of another person standing nearby, which sleep deprivation research has since documented extensively in extreme survival cases. It was not visual distortion. His brain was generating a companion he did not have. The figure wasn't a ghost. It was the auditory visual expression of a mind that had been alone, in silence, under terminal stress, for 5 consecutive days. The critical survival element was not the presence of the hallucinations. It was Ryan's response to them. He did not investigate. He did not approach the figures. He paused, assessed whether the experience was internally or externally generated, and continued moving. This level of metacognitive control, the ability to observe your own mental state and accurately label it as unreliable, under these conditions is, clinically speaking, exceptional. Most people cannot maintain the distinction between perception and hallucination in that state of physiological collapse. Ryan maintained it for 3 more days. He had kept his direction true. He had kept his mind barely intact. He had kept himself hidden for 7 nights from an army that was actively looking for him. Then he ran out of water. Near the end of his journey, at critical dehydration, Ryan consumed water from a stream near what he would later describe as an Iraqi industrial or research facility. The subsequent symptoms, skin peeling in layers, internal bleeding, severe gastrointestinal damage, are consistent with heavy metal or industrial chemical contamination. Ryan's account uses stronger language about the nature of the facility, but this specific claim has not been independently corroborated by UNSCOM or IAEA inspection records. The water was industrially contaminated. That is documented. That is enough. The long-term consequences were permanent. Ryan was assessed as medically unfit for frontline Special Forces operational duties on his return. His liver and kidneys sustained damage that persisted for years. He drank the water because dehydration would have killed him before he reached the border. A man at the absolute edge of his physiological limits, making the only rational calculation available to him. And if you want to know whether it was worth it, the answer is 11 kilometers from the Syrian border. It is the night of approximately 29th to 30th January, 1991. Day 7 of the escape. Chris Ryan has been moving northwest for 7 nights. He has eaten the equivalent of a handful of raw vegetables across the entire period. His body weight has dropped to levels that emergency medicine classifies as severe malnutrition. His internal organs are bleeding from contaminated water. He is experiencing presence hallucinations at irregular intervals. He is 3 hours from the Syrian border. He moves in the dark, crawl when there is no cover, rise to a crouch when terrain allows, freeze at sounds, flat when lights appear on the horizon, same as every night. Except tonight there is a road ahead. He crosses it. Different ground under his boots. Compacted gravel, not desert sand. He does not know exactly what it means yet. He keeps walking. Syria. Within hours, he is detained by Syrian border guards, uniformed soldiers who find a gaunt, mud-covered, barely coherent Westerner in military DPM attempting to explain in English that he is British SAS and needs to reach the British embassy. The Syrian guards do not speak English. Ryan is so emaciated, his face unrecognizable under dirt and catastrophic weight loss, his uniform in rags, that even with identification documents on his person, the guards do not believe he is a soldier. They think he may be a civilian, a spy, or a man who has simply lost his mind in the desert. They are, in a purely observational sense, not entirely wrong about that last part. He is held for several hours, fed, given clean water, the first clean water in days. British diplomatic staff are contacted and confirm his identity. He is transferred to British government custody and eventually evacuated to Riyadh, then to the United Kingdom. He has been absent from friendly lines for approximately 8 days. He has walked over 200 kilometers. He has lost 36 pounds. He is alive. Of the 8 men who climbed aboard that Chinook 8 nights earlier, Chris Ryan is the only one sitting in a hospital bed by choice. The immediate outcome, by the numbers, 3 killed by exposure and enemy contact, 4 captured, 1 escape. The mission objective of disrupting Scud operations was not achieved by Bravo 20 specifically, though the broader SAS campaign across western Iraq during Desert Storm contributed to degrading the overall Scud operational tempo. Chris Ryan was awarded the Military Medal for his escape and evasion. Andy McNabb received the Distinguished Conduct Medal for the patrol's conduct during the fighting withdrawal. The difference in decoration grade reflects their different roles, but it is a detail that has generated discussion, and it deserves to be noted. Ryan's record stands, as of this production, as the longest documented escape and evasion in the history of the Special Air Service Regiment. It has not been publicly surpassed. The institutional response was, as institutional responses tend to be, mixed. Post-operation reviews identified equipment failures, communications in particular, tactical errors in line-up position selection, and questions about the quality of pre-insertion intelligence. Some of these lessons were implemented. Others were handled quietly. Michael Asher's investigation added a further layer, that the patrol's Iraqi adversaries were more numerous and more capable than the original account fully acknowledged, and that enemy casualty figures from the fighting withdrawal may have been overstated. This is not an accusation. Combat at night under extreme stress with incomplete information generates genuinely imperfect perception. Asher's account is a corrective, not an indictment. Any serious documentary about Bravo 20 must include it. The 4 men who were captured, transported to Baghdad, interrogated, and subjected to documented physical abuse, were repatriated after the ceasefire. They have spoken rarely and selectively about what was done to them. That restraint deserves to be respected here, and their endurance deserves acknowledgement in any complete telling of this story. And the broader lesson, the one that lives beyond this specific desert and this specific unit and this specific war. The conventional wisdom about survival under extreme conditions says that the physically strongest, the best equipped, the most tactically experienced will endure. Bravo. 2-0 tests that assumption systematically and finds it incomplete. Chris Ryan was not the largest man on the patrol. He was not the most senior. What he had, and what he maintained across 8 days of conditions specifically designed by circumstance to destroy it, was the ability to make rational decisions in an environment that had become completely irrational, to navigate when he had almost nothing to navigate with, to set a goal small enough to be achievable, and then achieve it, and then set the next one. The desert does not care about your training. It does not care about your equipment. It cares only about one question. When everything has been taken away, and there is nothing left but the distance between where you are and where you need to be, what are you going to do next? Chris Ryan answered that question for 8 days straight. He went home. His daughter was 3 months older. He did not tell her where he had been.